All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Hai Nguyen. I'm co-founder of Affluence, the company behind Matrix. Welcome to the Introduction to Matrix webinar. I want to let you know that this webinar is recorded, and so we'll be sharing the webinar with everyone afterwards. And then secondly, in the chat section here, you can actually send any messages or questions that you have during the webinar. And then after my presentation, I'd be happy to go and answer them. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for being here today. I have a couple of goals. First of all, I want to help you understand the basics of Matrix. Hopefully that's the reason why you're here today, trying to learn how to become more effective and at the same time, how to use Matrix as a software. And then second of all, provide you a framework to get you the most out of Matrix with the least amount of work, because I think that there's always so many things you can do with the software, but where should you put your effort so that you can get the most value right now? And then thirdly, help you envision what your work and life success may look like with Matrix. And then lastly, give you some tips on how to achieve your 2024 goals. Now, of course, we can't do those things for you when the goals that you have, but what we can do is we can actually ensure that it is top of mind for you so then you can actually work towards those goals. Because I mean, that's something that it's top of mind for me. I'm always thinking about what is it that I want to achieve this year. I mean, it's already February 1st. I can't believe a month has passed for the new year. And yet at the same time, I need constant reminder to make sure that I get those things done. So hopefully these goals align with what you're looking for today. I understand that, for the people who are present at the webinar, as well as the people listening to the video afterwards, you're constantly struggling with prioritization and so forth. And one of those things that I've found very commonplace in my conversation with customers is that there are three very recurring challenges. The first is that team members have trouble understanding what's priority right now, right? So what that means is, when you work with your other coworkers, hopefully, I don't know if you'll see this resonates with you, but when you're working with coworkers, do you think everyone who's in that meeting sitting there with you are completely aligned on what the priority should be across all your projects? And typically the answer is no, and actually a vast majority of people would say that people are working on. And so at the same time, you feel like you're in this, everyone else a black box and you're in this silo. And then second of all, at the individual level, it's actually getting really hard to keep track on the status of work across so many different areas of responsibilities. We don't have just one project anymore. We don't have one initiative anymore. We're all juggling so many initiatives at the same time. And so then when you start your day, how do you decide what do I need to work on, right? And well, it's very difficult to decide that. At the same time, we don't have that clarity on our own priorities. And that's the most important thing, which is to ensure that you actually know what you could be working on. And then lastly, I think emails and meetings are just causing far too much context switching. So over the last couple of years, there's been so many software that comes out for prioritization, collaboration, project management, and all that. Yet at the same time, we still get emails that say, hey, could you do this? Or we still get meeting chat messages that say, could you do that? Or what's the status of XYZ? So one of the things that we're striving to do with Matrix is how do we solve that problem to help customers like you overcome that context switching to provide you the right information in the right context. So hopefully you know a little bit about what Matrix is, but Matrix is a comprehensive email priority and project management software that helps individuals prioritize their most important tasks and emails, right? So the most important part in using the software or what it is that we're trying to do is help you as an individual, because if we can't help you, almost nothing else matters, right? So at the personal level, as you think about Matrix and as you think about using it, just ask yourself that question. Am I using the software correctly? Am I prioritizing my tasks so I know what it is I need to work on? Am I prioritizing my email so that I'm not losing track of very important emails? And then two, at the team level, we help the whole group be aligned on key projects. So the idea is that imagine if you could peek inside your coworker's head, your manager's head, your executive's head, or your direct report's head, and see what priorities they have, right? And suddenly, if you see that any misalignment, then you can have clear conversations around it. And that's the goal of Matrix at the team level, which is ensuring that everyone's on the same page. Now, I'm not saying that you'd walk out of these meetings and saying, oh, great, we're all aligned and all that, and we know what the disagreements are. The idea is to surface up disagreements when you didn't realize there was one. And then you have the hard conversation with your coworkers around saying, hey, wait a minute, what should we be working on? What should we drop, etc. And then thirdly, it helps at the organizational level create a single source of truth to become more efficient and more effective. So imagine if every single one of your coworkers across your entire organization is on Matrix, then what happens is that you have one central place to know what everyone's working on. So we work with small businesses, right, where you have just a few dozen employees, where now, the owner can actually have a clarity and understanding on what it is that other people within the company is working on. And then at much larger organizations, global organizations, where we help is we actually help all these different departments manage their priorities and their tasks. And so when you have an employee that's on leave or move on to something else, you still have a strong understanding of what the priorities are on all these other projects. And that's one of those things where it's extremely challenging for organizations as they manage all this knowledge, right? All of us, I imagine almost every single one of you that's here today are at the end of the day knowledge worker, right? The stuff inside your brain is the most important part. So these are the challenges that Matrix aim to tackle. So to solve those challenges I mentioned earlier, we use what's called the four-quadrant methodology to promote effective prioritization. So I'll be going into the details of some ideas, philosophy around that methodology in a little bit. And then secondly, Matrix provide different views, such as the one-on-one, the agenda, the timeline, to help you understand what needs to be done within the right context. And then thirdly, we provide really deep integrations into systems you already use. In particular, Matrix is probably the most integrated software in the Microsoft Teams and Outlook ecosystem in order to ensure effective email and task prioritization. So I'll be showing each of these capabilities as we walk through this webinar. And so when you walk away from this meeting, hopefully you'll get excited about what you can do and the potential of Matrix, and hopefully you start, actually inputting your work into the system immediately. So what makes Matrix better is that it's the only project management software that is Microsoft 365 security certified in Teams, Outlook, and web app. And then at the same time, we're actually leveraging AI to help you achieve your goals. We're actually doing some really cool stuff that some exists already and some that's in the pipeline, and it is absolutely amazing. And I know, there's a lot of skepticism around AI, and that's perfectly warranted. So what we're trying to do is we're actually just trying to make sure that it's supporting you to achieve whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. So, be on the lookout for that, especially if you are looking for ways to become more efficient and more effective. And then at the organizational level, if you are a decision maker there, reach out to us and we can actually show you what the system is capable of and the things that you can turn on. And then thirdly, Matrix provide what I call people-centric collaboration as well. So it's not just around projects, right? All of us have projects. I have 300 plus projects. At the same time, I sometimes want to know, hey, what is it that I owe this other person? What is it that they assign me or I assign them? And what's the status of those tasks? And I don't care what project it's in across all my projects. And then lastly, Matrix is available as a standard SaaS solution, which is what I'll be demoing. But we also have a HIPAA compliant version for healthcare and life sciences, as well as an Azure government cloud solution for state and local governments. And of course, for enterprise customers, managed private Azure deployment. So if you're interested in some of the other capabilities, definitely reach out to us and we'd be happy to discuss. So what makes Matrix particularly effective is that it helps you determine what needs to be done now. And I think that's the key. So when you look at Matrix, you see, okay, this is what I need to focus my attention on. And then what are the things I should do next, right? Do later. But at the same time, after I'm done with the fires I'm fighting, what should I be working on? And then finally, what are the things that you delegate? At the end of the day, too, Matrix understands that your priorities are constantly shifting. So what that means is that, we're just trying to create one central place where everyone, right, you, your coworkers, your managers, can go to know exactly what needs to be done. And again, never forget that Matrix is designed to work at the individual level. So hopefully when you go into Matrix, you know what's everything on your plate, right? And of course, we can't help you do those things, not yet anyways. But hopefully when you look at it, you have clarity on where you should be focusing your time. So let's talk about the fundamental behind Matrix, the four-quadrant methodology. So there's a famous quote attributed to former President Eisenhower: "What is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important." What I really like about this quote is that it terses out the two very important dimensions of importance and urgency. So when you think about the things you have to do, right? Typically, I'll make an example of emails. This morning, first thing I do is I open my email and I look at it, and guess what? I look at the last email, right? That's the top of my list. So therefore, I look at that email first. And then sometimes I actually respond to it first. Is it the most important? Typically not. The most important emails is probably a little bit further down, but it's the last email, right? And so that's where this urgency aspect of things really kick in and harm our ability to do the right things. And it's the same thing across projects, across team communication, right? The person who sends you the last message is the person who's going to get a response first. And so instead of actually just looking at everything you have to do, we get pulled away by all these things that's pinging us constantly. So that's a very, very important distinction to make between urgency and important. So when you work on the things you need to work, what should you be focusing on? Well, perhaps the things that are most important and urgent. And so those are the things you got to do now. And then what happens is Matrix simply takes this concept and put it into matrix form. So instead of having one long to-do list, you have a to-do matrix. And so in Matrix, when you create tasks, you have to categorize them within the framework of these organizations of various dimensions. And so in the particular case, the importance and urgent dimensions, what you have is you have the top left as the do now. These are the things that are important and urgent that you must work on, right? And sometimes you can look at them as fires or issues that are high priority. And then quadrant 2, the plan quadrant, are the things that are important but not urgent. So when you have extra time and extra resources and you have a breather, that's what you should start working on, right? Start planning the stuff for quadrant 2. And then what are the things you can delegate? Who can take over some of your responsibilities for things that's actually not important to you, but perhaps needs to get done? So an example of that is if you're a manager and you have some direct reports who are actually, pretty good at executing on various stuff, delegate that to them. So then you can focus on your Q1. And then lastly, instead of actually having anything that's not important or urgent, you actually just have what's called an inbox. And so when I use Matrix, I look at the inbox as the place where I start writing my task. So, something comes up, my first thought is, okay, let me write that down into the quadrant 4, and then afterwards I'll move to the appropriate quadrant as needed. So imagine doing this exercise. Imagine if, even if you weren't using our software, just doing this is so powerful. Take out a piece of paper, draw the 2x2 matrix, and start writing down the things you have to do, or rather the priorities. Now, you don't want to go too granular. You want to think about what are the things that you can make decisions on, right? You can't make the decision not to eat. You can't make the decision not to do something that is extremely important. So therefore, you write down the things where you can make a decision on in terms of priorities. And then after you do that, ask your coworkers to do the exact same exercise. Ask your manager to do the same exercise. Ask your direct report to do the same exercise. And then guess what? You sit together and you compare notes. And that's where the magic happens with Matrix. What happens is that the 4-quadrant Eisenhower Matrix create alignment because it forces you to prioritize. Remember, when you write things down into that matrix, you can't just go and make it a list. And if you say, I don't know where this belongs in, well, then, you put in quadrant 4. But what that means then is that it is not quadrant 1. That means you shouldn't be working on it, right? And then success from using Matrix isn't about finding out what everyone agrees on. This is, by the way, this is not so obvious, but it is such an important takeaway. It's about discovering disagreement on something, on what should be priority when it isn't. And so hopefully if you do this exercise and you talk to your coworkers, you start surfacing up some really interesting tidbits. It's like, wait a minute, I didn't realize that you thought that was super important, or I didn't realize that this thing that I thought was important is not important at all. And that's where you can actually save so much time and resources by refocusing, reprioritizing your efforts to ensure that you work on the most important thing. So then when you walk away from the meeting, everyone's on the same page. And so every single week, my recommendation, project your matrix, your team priority matrix onto the big screen. When you guys are in your meeting, talk through it, get to that alignment. Okay, now with that, I'm going to start getting into the demo. I do want to remind you that our webinars are recorded, and so we post them on webinars on affluence.com/webinars, and then we want to hear from you. I know, this is mostly a one-way conversation, but for us, you, the users of Party Matrix, are the most important people, obviously, because our goal in all of this is to help you become more effective and more productive. And so if you're not finding that to be the case, reach out to us because we can help you figure out why. One of the things that we're doing is actually for our business customers, we're doing very hands-on things, which is we try to coach them, we try to provide support at a very personal level to ensure that you actually work on the right things. And so software is only as good as how you use it, right? There's nothing that we can do to help you as much as what you can do to help yourself. But we want to be there to coach you as needed. So if you have any questions or thought, reach out to me, hi@affluence.com or support@affluence.com, and we'd be happy to help. Okay, so with that, I'm going to jump to the demo. As mentioned, if you have any questions, send it through the chat and I'll be happy to look at it. And if you're watching this webinar, just send me a message by email and I'll look at it. Let's look at the product. Okay, now if you haven't installed Party Matrix yet, or if you haven't opened Party Matrix yet, this is the screen that you see when you run Party Matrix. So I have the web app open. As I mentioned, Party Matrix has multiple versions, but all our versions has the web app. And so what that means is you can access it from any browser and so forth. We also have desktop app, mobile apps, apps inside Teams, and Outlook. But at the end of the day, this is the format of the software. On my left-hand side, I have a list of projects. You can think of projects as anything from an actual project, like if you're a project manager, you have projects that you need to manage, or you can have something like my personal priority list, which is the project that I've selected here, or my goals for 2024, or employee training handbook, or lists of action items that you have to do for specific products. So what that means is there's many different types of projects, and Party Matrix gives you the flexibility to create all those different types of projects. Now, many of you, when you use Party Matrix, I recommend that you have a couple of types of projects right away from the get-go. One, you definitely should have a personal priority project, right? There's no point it's going to be very hard for you to manage your personal priorities if you don't write them down. And then second, you should have a team priority. So that's where you invite your coworkers so everyone's on the same page. So then again, when you have those Monday meetings or whatever, and you're doing the check-in, you're not just talking about whatever that comes up top of mind. You bring up your team priorities, you have it on the big screen, you look at it and you say, hey, let's talk about the things that are important. And so if you are a manager, you want alignment across your team. The worst thing is that we spend all our time and resources working on the wrong things. Doing the wrong things right is probably worse than doing nothing at all. That's my take on it. That's could be controversial, but just think about how much time and resources we waste working on the wrong things. So as you can see, there's many different types of projects. I again have 300 plus projects across everything. So if you need advice on that, feel free to reach out to us. But as you can see, that the way it works in Party Matrix is that once I select the project, front and center are my quadrants, right? So I have the do now, do later, delegate, inbox, just like I have in my presentation. And then what happens is Party Matrix lets you create what's called task or items. Very straightforward. If you've used any task management software before, even to-do lists and so forth, it's pretty much the same thing. So what that means is what I want to do is within a matrix, I can create a task. So I'll give you an example. Let's say I want to follow up with webinar participants. Okay, and so let me correct the spelling mistake here. There you go, with webinar participants. Now that's a simple task that I can create. But what I can also do is actually leverage Party Matrix natural language. And so instead of actually just saying that, I'm going to say due tomorrow at 2 p.m. Okay. And then down here, of course, I can click on date to set the date. I can assign it to somebody. But then also down here, I can add multiple tasks if I want to add another one real quick. But I'm going to go ahead and click add. The moment I add this task, the right-hand side changes to what's called the item details. So again, if you've used task management software, you know that, tasks don't just have a task name, they all have all sorts of other information associated with it. For example, they would say when it's due, right? How much time it's going to take, what are some other notes and so forth. And so you can think of these as what I would call metadata that is important to the task. So here, we'll see what project it belongs in. So if I need to move it to another project, I can. And then next to it, I can actually start a task. And this is actually really interesting. So what happens is starring a task will put it to the top of the list. As you can see, I have one item here. So starring doesn't make much of a difference. But when you have a matrix with dozens or hundreds of tasks, what you want to do is you want to star the tasks that are important or the tasks that you're working on at any point in time. So then it pops to the top of the list. So to me, I use it as a way to describe something as active. So again, let's just say when I have, a lot of things I need to cover, and the task list just gets way too long, I star them, and it, again, within each matrix, within each quadrant, it pops at the top of the list, and actually I can get reports in Pretty Matrix around all my star tasks. So that's very, very important. And then below that, you actually click on here, you can add icons. So down here, you see how I have various choices, just different way of visualizing what kind of task it is. Let's just say if I wrote email, then maybe I can put an email icon. But there's a couple of things that I like, which is the numbers. So for example, you can do 1, 3, or 9 as a way to visualize some other priority level or something like that. And then also the color coding. So actually, this came from customer feedback where essentially they want to be able to go and just visualize and say, hey, this task is on schedule, behind schedule, et cetera, et cetera. And so what that allows you to do, for example, is that it becomes very visual. So you can see how within the matrix, I can actually see the task. I can see the icon color. It just pops up and I can see right away how things are going. Now below that, you have owner. And so changing an owner is very easy. You click on this and you could delegate to another person, right? And then you become a follower to the task. So what a follower means is that you get status update for it. So if we're talking about priority management and we're talking about all these tasks delegated to different people and so forth, and then things get done, things get updated. And remember the challenge we talked about earlier, which is it's hard to keep track on the status of all these different tasks. Well, Party Matrix helps you decide on what tasks you want to follow, and then later on you can actually search for all the things that you follow and also get notifications on the changes that are relevant to you. So that's how you can think about owner and follower. So if you see a task, let's just say you're in a project, there's 100 tasks, and there's a couple of tasks that's really important to you. Essentially, you add yourself as a follower, right? That means you're not responsible for it, but you want the system to notify you that there's changes. Then you have progress, 0 to 100%, very straightforward. Effort is where you can say how long this task will take. Not all tasks are created equal. And then the next two features are the most important thing in Party Matrix: due dates and reminders. So let me give you an example. Let's just say you got to work on taxes, April 15th, right? Every year you set a due date and you would say, okay, this is due April 15th. You wait until April 15th, you're like, wait, I can't get this done. How can I possibly get this done in one day? So you actually want a reminder prior to that. And so that's the difference. So reminder is, again, a way of Pretty Matrix actually surfacing up and give you an alert that says, hey, you actually might want to look at this. This is coming up and it's due soon. So as you can tell, for example, if you're using calendar program and so forth, you get a reminder 10 minutes prior. But again, 10 minutes is not something that you can set, or that's sufficient for you to actually get things done on some complicated task. So how I like to use Pretty Matrix is the following. I always set due dates. As you can see earlier, I'd set that due date for tomorrow at 2 p.m. like I did. And then what happens, I can click on here and set reminder. But Pretty Matrix actually uses natural language as well. So let me explain to you again. So let's just say if I want to change the due date. So I'm going to say due in 1 week. Okay. So now what happens is I've just typed due in 1 week here in the chat. And so it turns green. That means the system actually understands it and processes it. And then I'm going to say remind me daily. So what I've just done is I've set a daily reminder for me for this task in particular. Now, if you were talking about the most important features of Pretty Matrix, this is it. If you're using Pretty Matrix, I need you to be setting due dates and I need you to be setting reminders on all your tasks so you come back to it and you get it done, right? If you don't set a date, how would you know that it's urgent? How would you know that you got to work on it soon? And so for me, when I use my Pretty Matrix, I always set due dates. I always set recurring reminders. And let me explain why you want to use recurring reminders. Let's just say if I set a reminder and say, remind me tomorrow, okay? So I start my day tomorrow. I look at my alerts and then I see the task, but then I also have 50 other alerts. So then maybe I didn't get to it. And then I clear it and I forget it. Well, the system's not going to send me another reminder until the due date. So instead, what happens is I would set recurring reminders so then it keeps on popping back to the top of my list every single day, and so it becomes top of mind. Earlier, I mentioned how, one of my flaws perhaps around using emails is that I look at the first email, as in the email that came in last. Well, imagine if your most important email was always popping back up to the top of your list, right? So the first time you're going to forget it, but then by the 10th time, you're like, okay, I really actually need to respond to this email. Same thing works with reminders. The way the reminder works is whenever there's a reminder that triggers, it pops up to the top of the list. In fact, down here, when you type your message, you could say remind everybody daily. So when I have to follow with customers, I would always say, due in 1 month, remind me weekly, or due in 1 year, remind me in yearly. You could do something like that too, or remind me monthly, remind me daily. Those are the kind of things that you can type in the command. So I highly recommend that. I'm emphasizing it so much because I feel like it's so important to ensure that you actually get your things done. Okay, below that, you have the chat section. You can see how I'm interacting with it. If I have multiple people working together, this is where you can communicate. So what I like about the chat inside Protomatrix is it allows you to have a conversation with your coworker within the context of the task. So what does that mean? You probably have so many conversations with your coworkers, down the hallway, in the meeting, or in Microsoft Teams or by email, and you're talking about all sorts of projects and so forth. Now, that's great. You can catch up then, but then what happens if you need to review all those conversations and then you realize, I don't remember what we said, or what was our decisions, or more importantly, if someone else is invited to the meeting, guess what? You're gonna have to do all of those catch up over and over again. Just think about how inefficient and ineffective that is. So instead of having all these conversations in all these different places, have the conversation within the context of the task itself. So what that means is if you have a task and you have coworkers working together, chat with each other in here within that task. So then later on, when someone else comes in and take a look at it, they know what everyone talked about. And Matrix provides you a history of all of those, and in fact, all the changes to the item and so forth. So on a per item basis, you have so much clarity and visibility. And here's the most important part. Imagine if the person who's in charge of the task is no longer with the company or is on leave and someone else needs to take over. Well, what if you have no idea what the person, how decisions were made and so forth? Well, Matrix gives you that visibility, and it is so powerful, especially if you're in a manager role. It is important for you to execute, regardless of who's available. So that's what you need to consider with respect to the chat. The notes section is where you can add notes. It's very, very simple notes. You can also add subtasks and bullets and so forth. If you need rich text, that's what Google Docs or that's what Microsoft Word is for. And then you can attach those to Matrix. But here, it's just intended to just be the task list that you do. And then in the resources section, this is where you can attach documents, files, and all of those other things that might be relevant. So let me give you an example. Let's just say, I have to provide a presentation for a customer, right? I would go and create a task around that, and then I would upload my draft in there, my draft PowerPoint in there, and then I'll get feedback, I'll update it, then I update my PDF in there, etc. But maybe if I have something that's a bit more complex, I can actually link other Matrix items into the system. So I click on that, and actually I can choose other Matrix item. And then what happens is it actually gets included in here. And as you can see, I can actually set dependencies too. I can say, certain items are blocked by the item that I have here, or blocks, etc. So when you do those things, Matrix will build Gantt charts for you automatically. Totally optional, but it's just a way for you to link complex tasks together, especially if you work on things with multiple moving parts, right? Some tasks are straightforward. Some tasks are extremely complicated with a lot of different moving parts and a lot of different resources. One of the coolest thing about Matrix is its integration with email. So we're probably the best integration in email management. So let me show you how that works. So here, I have my Outlook installed. So here's my Outlook for web, but of course, if you have Outlook for desktop or whatever, you can still install Matrix for Outlook. So let me give you an example here. Let's just say I open an email. What I can do is I can add the Outlook extension, the Matrix Outlook extension. So you click on apps here, you click add apps, and you search for Matrix. I already have it installed, so I simply click on this button. And when I do, you see I have two options. I have the option to prioritize the email, or I have the option to open Party Matrix. So I'm going to go ahead and click on prioritize email. So what this does is it actually lets me turn any email into a task. The moment I click capture email, this converts into a task. But here's the cool part. I can actually go and decide what project it goes in. I can decide what quadrant it goes in. I can decide who should be responsible for it. I can set a due date, all of that directly from the Outlook extension. So imagine if you are, working with an external client, and the client sends you an email, and in that email they're asking for something, and now you need to ensure that other people within your team needs to know the status of this stuff, and so they need to work on it, and get all those progress updates. Probably today, you probably just forward that email to a bunch of people and say, hey, can you take a look at this? Well, the problem you have with that forwarding is, what about the due date? You just make sure that someone knows that they're supposed to do it. And then who's responsible? What if that responsibility changes? And then also, what priority is it? Is it high priority, low priority? Is it quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4? You can't do that within the context within an email. And then not only that, what project does it belong in? Because imagine if you have one email from one client, but then you have 15 different clients. Now you just have a bunch of forwarded emails and no one knows what it is they need to work on, right? And you go back to square one on the challenges you face around prioritizing across all these different projects. So the way it works with Party Matrix is you can actually put that email within the right context, the right project, the right quadrant assigned to the right people with the right due dates. And that's the magic of Party Matrix software, to bring it all together into one central place. So if I click on capture email, it converts into a task. And when it does, it opens up the item details exactly like you saw in the web app, directly inside Outlook here. Again, I can move it around. I can set icons. I can star it. I can set reminders as needed. So if you get a lot of emails, and I get a few hundred emails a day, so I have to be on top of my emails constantly. I have to go and prioritize all those important emails. But what's really neat is that Party Matrix actually integrate with email in so many other ways too. So you have an inbox address. So for example, when I'm on my phone, I use Apple Mail, so I don't have an Outlook extension. And so on my phone, I'm walking around or something like that, and an important email comes in, I can forward that email into my Party Matrix and set due dates. And so that's called the inbox. And then at the same time, when I have a bunch of emails from the same organization over and over again. So for example, I have emails from Microsoft. And so what I do is I actually want to go and organize all that into specific projects in Party Matrix. I can do that with auto rules using Party Matrix integrations. And so I actually have a webinar called Email Management Masterclass. So if any of this sounds interesting to you, check out that webinar recording. You'll see how to set up all these stuff with your emails. It's extremely powerful. The other thing is, what if you get an email, but it belongs to an existing task? Well, Party Matrix is the only software that I know that also lets you attach emails to existing items. So when you go to here, you can actually search for your Party Matrix item and then attach this email to that task itself. And so this allows you to actually keep things organized. So you might have 5 or 6 emails, all follow-ups, all relevant to within the context of that task, and all the people who's there need to know about it. Okay, so that's our email integrations. There's a couple of settings here that you can go and you can look at it about uploading emails and so forth. But there's another neat feature, which is if you're, some people just live inside Outlook. Party Matrix actually has what's called the universal app. So what's neat about that is you can actually access Party Matrix directly inside Outlook. So to do that, you click on more apps, you click add apps, you search for Party Matrix, and then you can pin it to the left-hand side here. And look at that. I have the entire Party Matrix web app inside Outlook. I don't even have to open Party Matrix. I don't have to go to any website. I don't have to do any of those things. I can go to here. It looks just like another Microsoft icon that, fully integrated into your Outlook. Okay, so now let's go back to the web app. Because we just talked about email prioritization, which I think is extremely important. But now I want to talk about going back to the concept of projects. And so you saw how I have my personal priorities here. What if you want to create a new project? Let me show you how to do that. You click on projects here and you choose create project. When you choose to create a project in Party Matrix, you have several options. You can always do a blank project. A blank project pretty much means just have an Eisenhower matrix. There's nothing in there. You can choose the color. I can type, what the project is and click add. And so that's very, very straightforward. Now, What's neat too is actually Matrix allows you to save templates. So let me give you an example. Let's just say if you have a process that you go through over and over again, and you have 20 tasks that you have to repeat constantly every time you do this process. And it could be something like quarterly review or onboarding a new client or onboarding a new employee if you're in HR. So then you can actually create that Party Matrix and you can save it as a template. And then from there, you can actually launch a Party Matrix as part of your template instead of actually a blank project. And so Party Matrix will actually save you a ton of time. You don't have to recreate all the stuff in it. We can actually replicate that for you. So I also have a webinar on templates, recorded webinar that you should check out if this is interesting to you, if you have a lot of repetitive work. The other neat thing is you can actually export Party Matrix into your CSV, Excel file, and so forth for reporting, right? So imagine if you're a project manager and you need to report on the status of the task across your project. Party Matrix gives you a very, very simple view, a simple way to export that into Excel, and then from that, you can do whatever it is that you need to do. All right, so that's how a project works. That's how creating a project works. And then we also have what's called Creative with AI. So if AI is turned on for you, you can go here, you can type in a goal, and our system will build out your project for you. It's not intended to be perfect, nothing is, but what it does is, let's just say you want to be promoted this year, right? Type that in here and Party Matrix will build you a list of action items that you should be working on to ensure that you get promoted. And if you do, make sure you thank us. And so now let me go back to the project here. Let's say I open a project. One of the things I can do with my project too is I can open what's called the project details. I can click on this little eye. And so earlier we talked about the item details, but in the project details, it allows me to do a couple of things. I can change the name of the project, obviously. I can actually star the project. So just like starting a task, starting a project pops it to the top of my list here. So again, what I like about starring is I start things that are active. So these, let's just say, again, I have 300 projects, right? I can't go and click through all of them. I have maybe 10 active projects. So I would start those and they always are up here so I can get to them really quickly. And then when I'm done with them, I can unstart and then, they'll go back to their ordering. Down here, I have what's called members, and I actually can add members as needed to my project. So my personal priority, maybe I don't have anybody, but my team project, I should have all my coworkers with me on there. And so whenever someone's on a project, they can see all the tasks associated with it. So then when you have a meeting, you can go and say, hey, these are our priorities. This is what you should be working on. But here's another cool thing, which is look at Party Matrix as a way to do asynchronous check-in, right? Let me explain what that means. Let's just say if you're in a meeting, when your weekly check-in, that's when you talk to other people and then you get alignment. But with Party Matrix, if you share a project with all your priorities, you can be aligned at any point in time. If you're a manager, you can open up the Party Matrix for the share team project, also a project with each of your coworkers and so forth, and you can see exactly what their priorities are, and you don't have to have a meeting for it, right? And so that is asynchronous. You don't have to be in the same room at the same time. And guess what? It lets everyone actually just do things as opposed to be in meetings just to get alignment. So how much more powerful would your organization be, or have your team be, if everyone's on the same page at any point in time, right? And then if you're trying to see what your manager priorities are, right? So then you're working on the right thing. Well, then you open the share project as well. And now you'll see the team priorities. Then you can decide, okay, you know what? This is what I need to work on, and this is what I shouldn't be working on. So that's how you can decide what team members to have in here. And then you can actually change the name of the quadrants too. So I mentioned the Eisenhower Matrix, but at the end of the day, actually, it doesn't matter. You can use whatever quadrant name that you want as long as it works well for you to decide what needs to be worked on. So I've seen customers, instead of do now, they'll type fires. Some organizations use P0 as a way to signify that something's high priority. Other times you can use the dimensions of impact versus effort. So Party Matrix gives you several hundred different templates that you can choose from in terms of naming convention for the quadrant name. So giving you pretty much every single possible combination of how to think about 4 quadrants. So don't worry about just using the Eisenhower Matrix. That's just the basis of our system, but it gives you infinite flexibility. And so as you use Party Matrix more, organizations will actually build up internal knowledge on how to best name the quadrants and so forth. And so that allows you to save that as a template. Now you can use it and you can actually, ensure that your success is actually depending on adapting Protomatrix to work exactly the way that you want. And then of course I can click on here and change the color as well. So as you can see, my list of project here, I have a lot of different colors. And so I like the color coding to signify different types of projects or different types of initiatives. Maybe marketing is one color, engineering is another color. Again, it's just a very visual way. So when you look at this, you have a really good sense on the kind of project that's active, etc. Okay, as you can see, there's a lot of information that I'm not conveying about Protomatrix because you don't have to use all the features, right? So let me just quickly recap on the features that you should definitely use. One, definitely create a project for your personal priorities. Definitely create a project for your team priorities, right? You don't have to go and change the quadrant name or anything, but make sure that you invite the appropriate people to those priorities. And so use the basic Eisenhower method as your starting point. Two, when you create tasks, make sure that you set the due dates, make sure you set reminders, right? And then make sure you put them in the appropriate quadrant. So then you can actually look at it and know exactly what your priorities are. So those are the most important things about Protomatrix. You almost don't have to use any of the other features, but if you did those things, you will actually find that you have a lot more clarity on what it is you need to work on because it's taking it out of your brain, put it down on something that's tangible, and then making it visible to your team. And the same thing happens to the rest of your coworkers. They got to do the exact same thing. And so that's on you to ensure that everyone's on the same page. Okay, in terms of other advanced capabilities inside Protomatrix, those are things you can explore over time. So for example, let me just quickly highlight some of the other things that I think is actually valuable. Let me just choose another project here. So you see in this project, I have a lot more tasks, right? So with Protomatrix, we actually give you other ways to look at the information. So for example, I can go to the list view and I can see all the action items here along with the due dates. I like this view for searching for things that are overdue. So you can see anything that's overdue just turns red. And so it allows me to jump to a task really easily. I can also see when they're modified. I have the calendar view. Anything that has due dates actually shows up in your calendar, Protomatrix calendar on a per project basis. And then I can actually reprioritize things just by dragging and dropping or click on it and actually edit the item. So it's the same information, but it's just conveyed in different views. And then the other view is the Gantt chart. And so this is a timeline view. And so if you need to see things, how things are spanning out multiple quarters, for example, that's what this view is for. So if you're working on a project and you need to build a report to show your clients that, hey, this is the status of things, or this is what the timeline looks like, you can just go here and Protomatrix builds that out for you. You can take a screenshot and put it into your presentation as needed. So Protomatrix provide all of these insights. Now, there's a couple of things that I just want to hint at as opposed to going into the details of, which is Protomatrix has reports. And so here you can actually go to workload report to see if some of your coworkers are overloaded, right? So important if you're trying to delegate and ensure that actually people are not overwhelmed. I mean, it's so important. We just have so many things on our plate nowadays. When you go to this view, you can see, hey, so-and-so has a lot of tasks on that certain date. If I assign more, that's not going to work. And you can actually drill down into the task on a per day, per person basis directly from here. We also have a lot of other reports, and we also have custom reports for enterprise customers as well, essentially providing you the information that you need specific to your needs from this wealth of information that's in Protomatrix. So one thing I want to mention real quick is our integration with Teams. And this is the last thing here. What happens is Protomatrix, you can go inside Teams, you can go to apps, install Protomatrix. I click on this, I pin it here, and it looks exactly like the web app, just like you saw in the Outlook app. But the other neat thing in Teams in particular is what's called our one-on-one. So when you have a chat with somebody in Teams, definitely install this because I actually think this is a super powerful feature, which is when I go to one-on-one, I can see everything I have in common with that person across all of my matrices, all my projects, right? So if you're a manager and you have 10 direct reports and you're trying to see, what is Bob working on? What is Sally working on, et cetera? By using the one-on-one, you can actually go to them and you just, essentially see all the things that's important, whether they're overdue, what's modified. You can click on each of these things and just drill down as needed. So to get to the one-on-one, you just click on this plus here, choose Protomatrix. and then choose the one-on-one. And then you can just add that for each of the coworker that you work with. The neat thing about this is if you're having your one-on-one meeting, you can actually just click on add share task and create the task directly here inside Teams, inside the one-on-one view. You don't have to open Matrix, find a project, create a task, delegate to the person. You can just go here and automatically assign to the other person, and then you just set the due date using natural language. And so we can save you so much time and effort. The reason why I like this feature is because I've seen cases where so many, people would walk out of a meeting and then, they came up with so many good ideas, right? At the meeting. And then 2 weeks later, you recap and you're like, hey, by the way, did we get XYZ done? And the answer is, oh, yeah, I didn't write that down, so I never get around to it. So this sort of takes away that excuse, because when you're in your meeting, just open this up and actually just create the task directly from here. So how much more convenient can you be, right? So easy to actually ensure that to capture all those awesome ideas directly from your meetings. And speaking of that, the other thing you can do is actually in the chat itself, if you're using chat and you're sending messages, you can actually just click on the conversation and create a Matrix task directly from any conversation you have with anybody inside Teams. Matrix also lets you embed projects. So we have customers that actually want to add read-only version of the Matrix project inside Teams channel or Teams chat, so that other people can actually go and see the status of all the awesome work that they have without the ability to edit it. And so you can actually do the exact same thing, just go to each of the features inside Teams and add the Matrix tab. We also have integrations with meetings, allowing you to actually bring up agenda and so forth. And then the one other feature that I like here is the ability to attach Matrix action card to send to people as needed. So sometimes you delegate something to somebody and then, you don't hear from them, right? So Matrix, will send them notifications, like here in the chat bot, it send notifications that a certain item is due and so forth. But yet at the same time, people may not get around to it. And so by going to send this action card, it's just a way for you to, remind them inside Teams that, hey, could you take a look at this, etc. So I do like the chat bot as a way for me to get notifications on alerts and due dates and so forth. I did mention earlier on how you might get alerts. Well, if you go back to Matrix, there's something called the home view. And essentially what the home view does is it opens this view that instead of the matrix, I see my alerts, right? So anything that's overdue, anything where a reminder trigger or anything that is assigned to you. So let's just say a coworker assigned you a task, it'll show up here, or a task that you're a follower on that got updated, it'll show up here. And so you'll see that and you can click through this and essentially get to inbox 0. Otherwise, you can actually clear notifications. So if you come back from vacation or whatever, you can actually just clear all the old items. And that's why you do those recurring reminders, right? And so when you have recurring reminders, you don't have to worry about clearing all this. The recurring reminders will come back up to ensure that you work on those things. Okay, so my one quick advice around goals for, meeting your goals for 2024, if you create a project called Goals for 2024, so let's just say, read a new business book monthly, okay? Imagine if that's one of my goals that I create. So by the way, I recommend that you do this too, create your goals project for 2024. I name my long-term goals, short-term goals, things I will not do, and then ideas on what else I could add to my goals. And then what happens is this. One of the biggest problems we have when we set goals is we forget them, right? It's nice because in the January, you're so gung-ho about it. You're excited about all these goals. And then afterwards, you're like, well, I totally forgot about it. So the trick is to do these goals and then to type remind me monthly. And so now every month, Matrix will send you the notifications. It pops at the top of your list and you're like, oh yeah, I did say I was going to do that. So that's my my trick of the day. So use those recurring reminders. And then the other neat thing too, as you can see, there's a little icons here that pops up in terms of that shows if anyone has seen the task. So of course, this is your own project, so it doesn't matter. But what's nice is that Matrix will actually let you get visibility on whether your task has been seen by other people. So if you assign somebody a task, you want to know that they've seen it. If they haven't seen it, they're not going to get it done. Okay, there's 1,000 things more that Matrix can do. We have integrations with Chrome, Edge, Power Automate, Workflow, Microsoft Copilot, also connectors to To-Do, Trello, Jira, and so forth. So I can't go into all of those, and it's not important, right? I'll be the first person to tell you that all those other things are amazing if you have the specific needs for them, but you don't have to worry about that. In the beginning, this is an introduction. You just follow the guidelines that I set, and I think you'll get the most out of it. With that, I'm going to go back to my presentation real quick to wrap this up, and then I'll answer any questions that may come up. One, it's on you now to sign up and use Protomatrix if you haven't yet. If all of this seems new to you, don't worry. Just use Protomatrix. If you have Teams and Outlook, install them. And the neat thing is, just create 3 projects: personal priorities, shared team priorities, and key initiative, and then goal for 2024 if that's important to you. Invite the appropriate team members. When you create tasks, always set due dates, right? Set reminders, and then don't drop them. That's pretty much it. And so if you did that, you can almost forget all the other features in Protomatrix, and I guarantee you will come out far more productive today. And make sure that you ruthlessly prioritize your time, right? Because if you don't, someone else will. And so if you do this, again, on a daily basis, and I hopefully have right after this webinar, I get you excited enough where you can actually just open up Protomatrix and start noting down the things you have to do. So then get started right away, because if you don't do today, when will you do it, right? You can't put things off. And then some advice: use Protomatrix to track high impact tasks. Like I mentioned, track the things where you can make decisions on. That's sort of the point. If you can't make decisions on it, why bother writing it? Again, if you're going to go grocery shopping, I don't think Protomatrix is that valuable in terms of priorities. And then think of Protomatrix as a communication tool. It's a communication tool, so then you and your manager and your team members can all be aligned. And then use Protomatrix to manage your individual goals. As I mentioned, the root of Protomatrix more than a decade ago started out as a software to help individuals prioritize their task. And so if you can prioritize your task and you are successful, everything else will fall into place. So success with Protomatrix means that you have one central place to track all your priorities. Everyone on the team understands and are aligned on key tasks. Repetitive procedures are templatized, and then important emails are prioritized. I want you to remember this slide, because if you're not getting this value, that means you're not using Protomatrix to the full potential, right? Reevaluate how you're using Protomatrix. Make sure that you're doing these things that I said here. That's pretty much it for my presentation. I'm going to take a look if there's any questions that anyone has, and if you do, I'll answer them. And then if you want to send me a message afterwards, hi@affluence.com, I'd be happy to look. Perfect. Now, are there any questions? Okay, so it's rare, but I usually get a series of questions at the webinar, but thank you very much for being here today. Thank you. I appreciate the message. And then with that, feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or feedback on Protomatrix. We're always here to help you. There is one question around, is there a CRM built in? So Protomatrix is not a CRM, but we actually internally, we use it to integrate with Zendesk to manage all our support tickets and so forth. So we actually use Protomatrix to track the status of our communications with our customers. And I find that to be a lot more productive and effective, because I can attach so much more information to every single action item related to a customer. And then I can expand the customer into another project if needed. And then at the same time, I can actually ensure that, everyone's aligned across product and engineering and so forth. Because I think CRM systems kind of lack some capabilities around being able to pull in across the whole organization. Is the app translated to Spanish? The answer is yes. Actually, if you use Protomatrix, you can actually switch to Spanish. I believe we have a couple other languages as well. We also have a Spanish webinar. So if you need to actually listen to this in Spanish, one of my coworkers has done this in Spanish. So you can actually get that video. Reach out to us if you need that. And so in terms of integrations with Microsoft CRM, so we actually integrate through Power Apps. So we have couple of extensions in Power Apps that allow you to do if this then that. So you can actually say, if this happens in your CRM, you can create a task in Protomatrix and so forth. So Protomatrix is also one of the very first integrations with various automation tools. So let me see if I can show that right here. So if you go to apps here, there's something called workflows. And so if you search for Party Matrix, one of the things you'll see is that actually we have a series of workflows that's available. So apps here, for some reason, workflow doesn't show up for me here. But in workflows, Party Matrix has a series of workflows. And so you can actually create these rules and so forth that helps you integrate more services outside of Party Matrix, inside Party Matrix. For enterprise customers, we can actually build some of these things out for you. So if you have really detailed questions around that, just reach out to us and we'd be happy to help. I see that someone's asking about small business discounts. Reach out to us. If you send an email to sales@affluence.com, we'd be happy to take a look. But we serve customers of all sizes, and so one of the things that's most important is we want to ensure that you're successful. So just reach out to us and we can help. Fantastic. Well, thank you for all these questions. All right. Please feel free to reach out to me at hi@affluence.com if you have any feedback. Okay. Thank you so much.